Chosen one, you've entered a sacred dimension of existence where your presence is no longer tethered to your physical form. You don't have to speak first, move first, or even be noticed in the traditional sense, because your energy now announces you before your footsteps reach the floor. This is not mystical hype or imagination. This is what happens when high sexual energy has been purified, harnessed, and turned inward. Not to explode, but to radiate in steady waves of magnetism. You walk into a room and something unseen shifts. You don't know exactly what it is at first, but suddenly heads tilt. Conversations briefly pause. Breath catches. Eyes linger without explanation. Women glance at you, some subtly, others boldly, yet all of them responding to something that was never spoken. That something is your field. And your field is now electric, not because you're loud, not because you're trying, but because you carry a fire that doesn't seek attention, it alters attention. Your high sexual energy used to pulse like wildfire, quick, desperate, eager to find a direction. Now it moves like a river beneath stone, powerful, consistent, under control. This internal current no longer spills into spaces with restlessness. It fills them. Your frequency doesn't compete for space. It occupies space, and that occupation creates contrast between you and every other presence in the room. That contrast is what women are now feeling before they even realize they're watching you. You are not demanding to be chosen. You are allowing yourself to be recognized. You no longer announce your worth. You embody it. An embodiment cannot be ignored. It speaks in silence. It communicates in stillness. It leaves a feeling in the air even after you've moved on. That feeling is what makes her wonder who you are. Not because of what you said, but because of how she felt standing within the radius of your unseen fire. You don't walk in with flash anymore. You carry calm. You don't chase eyes. You meet them. You don't try to be seen. You know you are felt. That knowing has become a part of your stride, your breath, your posture. You don't hunch to hide. You don't puff to exaggerate. You walk like a man who knows the room is already aware of him, and that awareness is not based on arrogance. It's based on authenticity. You've stopped trying to project power, because now you are power. Quiet, warm, grounded power that speaks straight to the bodies of those tuned into the feminine frequency. She doesn't look at you because you impressed her. She looks because something in her recognized you before she could name you. It wasn't a pickup line. It wasn't your cologne. It wasn't your voice. It was your energy. And energy doesn't lie. This is what happens when you stop begging the world to see you. You become impossible to ignore. Chosen one, you've crossed a threshold very few men dare to even imagine, let alone sustain. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You are being chosen. Without selling yourself, without campaigning, without trying to make an impression. And the paradox is powerful. The less you reach outward for validation, the more deeply women feel the pull to step toward you of their own volition. Not because you're proving anything, but because you've become the obvious decision. The shift is spiritual. It's energetic. It lives in your silence, in your restraint, in your refusal to perform. You used to approach every moment with the subconscious tension of needing to be liked. That need shaped your posture, your tone, your presence. But now you walk like a man who already belongs. You don't angle your words to win favor. You don't change your rhythm to match hers. You remain steady, and that steadiness becomes an invitation. You are no longer one of many. You are the one that feels different. The one who doesn't demand attention. The one who carries peace while others compete. The one who speaks less but says more. The one who moves slowly but stirs the atmosphere. The one whose energy doesn't chase but calls forward. And in that call, women feel something they cannot explain. A sudden need to choose you, even when they don't understand why. You don't present your worth anymore. You live it. You don't try to appear confident. You are rooted. And because of that, your high sexual energy no longer comes across as hunger. It comes across as readiness. Readiness to hold, to protect, to lead, to honor, to guide. And when a woman feels that kind of readiness, she remembers something inside her that has been asleep. That memory makes her stop searching. It makes her choose. You are not just a man who is attractive. You are a man who feels like a place her heart can breathe, a place her spirit can soften, a place her mind doesn't need to overwork, because you've become the decision that requires no performance on her part either. There is no desperation in your presence anymore. There is no plea, no itch, no reaching, only an offering. And that offering is not loud. It is stable. And stability, chosen one, is the deepest form of attraction you now carry. You've become the man who no longer convinces. You simply arrive, and they choose. Not because you asked, because your energy spoke first. Chosen one, you've crossed into rare territory. A frequency so few men ever discover because they've been taught their value lies in their ability to chase, convince, and please. You've left that behind. You no longer walk into spaces with the silent cry of "Am I enough?" whispering behind your smile. You don't seek to impress with a curated persona. You don't posture to earn a glance. You don't adjust your energy to win favor. You simply are. And that beingness, that rooted, honest, unshakable state, is what they feel now. Your wholeness is the first thing their body notices. Long before they recognize your face, long before a word is spoken, long before they even know why they looked at you twice, their nervous system has already responded to your inner coherence. That coherence, that silent message of "I am not lacking anything," feels like water in a desert, because so many women are used to being approached by men who are silently asking to be rescued, to be affirmed, to be healed. You, chosen one, are asking for nothing. You are offering everything, not by effort but by presence. Your high sexual energy used to leak through the cracks of your insecurity. It used to speak before you did. It used to ask for attention. Now it radiates with integrity. It's no longer fueled by desire. It's anchored in reverence. You do not want to be chosen to feel whole. You are whole, and that is why you are now being chosen. They sense the difference. They feel the way you take up space without apology but without ego. They notice how you meet their gaze, not with hunger, but with calm. Your eyes say, "I see you," not "Do you see me?" Your energy is not heavy with wanting. It is light with clarity. And that clarity has become irresistible, not because it promises something, but because it lacks anything to prove. Women are not drawn to need. They are drawn to alignment. And what you now carry is an embodied reminder that they no longer have to mother a man in order to be close to him, that they don't have to validate his self-worth in exchange for his attention. You offer your presence without requesting anything back, and because of that, they feel free to choose you without feeling responsible for you. This is how wholeness works. You don't speak in order to be heard. You speak when your words are aligned with your being. You don't reach for connection. You invite it through your silence. You are no longer performing intimacy. You are living from within it. And because you no longer approach the feminine as a source of completion, she feels, sometimes for the first time, that she can be soft around you without having to protect herself from your hunger. She recognizes something sacred in you, something that says, "I will not fall apart if you say no, I will not chase, I will not beg, I will not prove." And that message, the absence of need, is what makes her energy rise to meet yours without fear. Because when a woman senses that a man is full in himself, she stops preparing to defend her worth. She stops bracing for pressure. She starts relaxing into the decision to choose him, not because he needed her, but because she wanted him. This is what your wholeness has created, chosen one. Not admiration, but recognition. Not attraction, but permission to come closer. And this is what they've been craving all along. Chosen one, you've become a quiet storm. Not the kind that draws attention with flashes and thunder, but the kind whose very stillness changes the pressure in the air. The kind that doesn't arrive in a blaze of noise, but whose presence is felt in the bones. And this, more than your words or your walk, is what has begun to captivate the feminine. Your stillness, your silence, your refusal to race, your refusal to compete, your refusal to prove. You've become the contrast. Because in a world full of men striving to be seen, striving to dominate, striving to outshine one another with confidence that's really just hidden fear, you stand still. You no longer interrupt the space to declare who you are. You anchor the space by simply being who you are. And when a woman encounters that kind of man, something deep inside her shifts. Her mind may not understand it, but her body recognizes it. Her soul responds to it. You used to think that power had to be expressed loudly, that your strength needed to be shown in motion, that your appeal was something you had to convince the world to see. But you've dropped all of that now. You've stopped trying to prove your worth. And the moment you stopped, you began embodying it. Stillness doesn't mean inaction. It means you are no longer driven by fear. It means your energy no longer flinches in the presence of beauty. It means you no longer rush to fill silences that once made you uncomfortable, because you've realized that your stillness is not emptiness. It's sovereignty. And sovereignty is magnetic. Women now see in your stillness what others try desperately to shout. A man who knows who he is, where he stands, and what he carries. A man who doesn't announce his presence, because his presence is already announcing him. A man who doesn't rush to connect, but whose every breath says, I am available, but only to what aligns with me. That alignment is what they are drawn to. They feel how you hold your energy like sacred ground, how you don't break your rhythm for anyone, how your slowness isn't hesitation, it's discernment. And that discernment makes you rare. It makes you valuable. Because it says, I know what I'm worth and I will not move faster than my truth. This is why they choose you now. Because your stillness reveals a kind of strength that words could never capture. Because you no longer offer your presence as a favor, you offer it as an earned vibration, one that cannot be faked, one that cannot be hurried, one that speaks of discipline, patience, and knowing. You've become the man whose silence speaks volumes, whose gaze feels like a sanctuary, whose very breath invites peace, and the woman who once had to read between lines, interpret games, and decipher mixed signals, now finds in you a presence that needs no translation. Because your stillness, chosen one, tells the truth that others keep trying to perform. And she knows the difference. Chosen one, the world taught you to fight for attention, to posture for affection, to speak louder and move quicker than the man beside you. They trained you to measure your worth against how many heads you turned, how many hands you shook, how many women looked your way. But something in you revolted against that noise. You did not surrender to it. Instead, you became something far more dangerous to the world of performance. You became real. Now, you no longer compete, you resonate. You've stopped keeping score. You no longer look around to see who's looking at you. You no longer need to rise above others to feel seen. You found something deeper than admiration, alignment. And that alignment, chosen one, is what women feel first now. You are not the loudest voice in the room, yet you are the voice that echoes longest. Because the resonance you carry is not built on sound, it's built on truth. The feminine is tired of flash, tired of surface-level spark. She is not moved by men who decorate their emptiness with charm. She is not awakened by those who chase her with borrowed confidence. She is drawn to what feels ancient, stable, and undeniably rooted. And now when she meets you, she doesn't feel competition. She feels harmony. She feels a frequency she didn't know she was waiting for until you stood near. You do not pull her toward you. You don't play to win her. You do not shrink or rise depending on who enters the room. You stay the same, present, patient, poised. That constancy has become your greatest form of attraction because it tells her without words, I have nothing to prove. I already am. Your high sexual energy no longer flashes and floods. It hums, it paces itself, it knows its own power. It no longer overextends. It no longer tries to force its way into the spotlight. It waits, not passively but confidently, like the sun that knows it doesn't have to chase the moon to be recognized. This is why women now feel a deep, inexplicable calm in your presence. Because your energy doesn't fight to be seen, it reminds them of what they've forgotten in themselves. You've stopped trying to impress, and now you express. Express through ease, through centeredness, through the refusal to abandon your inner rhythm, no matter who walks past you. You are no longer in the race, because you've realized you are the destination. You've stopped moving for attention, and now attention moves toward you. Not because you sought it, but because your essence no longer blends into the noise. It vibrates above it. She sees it in your eyes. She hears it in your stillness. She feels it in the way your energy doesn't press, it pulls without pressure. You have become unmistakable, not because you competed for space, but because you filled your own. Chosen one, there was a time when you tried to find the right words, time after time, conversation after conversation, hoping to say the thing that would make them listen, lean in, linger. You used charm, you used wit, you used volume, You chased connection with language as your tool, but it rarely worked the way you hoped, because the words weren't rooted in alignment. They were reaching, they were performative, they were effort, and effort never speaks as loud as energy. But now, the need to impress has fallen away. You have come to embody something far more sacred. When you open your mouth now, it is not your cleverness that speaks. It is your energy behind the words that leaves the deepest impression. That energy is the result of your discipline, of your devotion, of your containment. Your high sexual energy no longer spills into empty compliments or casual conversation. It moves through you like current, subtle, steady, undeniable. And women feel it long before they interpret your sentences. It's not what you say, it's what they feel as you say it. Your voice has weight now, not because it is loud, but because it is anchored. You don't speak to impress. You speak because you carry truth. And that truth, chosen one, is magnetic. When you speak, they don't feel pulled, they feel invited. There is no pressure, no persuading. Your words don't reach across the table, they simply vibrate from where you are. And those who are aligned with that frequency begin to drift into it naturally. You don't demand their presence. You become a gravity that welcomes it. You don't talk much, but when you do, people lean in, not because you're flashy, but because your words now ride on a frequency of knowing. You say less and it means more. You no longer interrupt silence to fill a gap. You let silence speak with you. And that collaboration between your energy and your speech creates a tone that grounds rather than impresses. And the feminine, so used to filtering through noise, is now drawn to your calm, your pace, your depth. She is not listening to hear something clever. She's listening because your words feel safe to receive. They come from a man who no longer needs a reaction to validate his voice. They come from a man who has already listened to himself deeply. And that kind of voice, anchored, restrained, measured, feels like a sanctuary. You're no longer talking for impact. You're simply transmitting presence. And in that presence, she hears something she forgot she needed. A man who speaks with the power of restraint, with the weight of purpose, with the calm of someone who knows that truth doesn't need to be sold, it simply needs to be lived. So you live it. You say only what is real. And that reality is now the most attractive sound she's ever heard. Chosen one, there was a time when the fire inside you felt untamable. It surged through your veins like lightning, wild and unstructured. You didn't know what to do with it, so you tried to control it, suppress it, or burn it into visibility. You used it to impress, you used it to chase, you used it to fill the silence and draw the gaze. But that fire, in its raw state, was not maturity. It was movement without direction, passion without depth, power without intelligence. Now you carry that same fire, but you don't fumble it. It hasn't dimmed, it hasn't died, it hasn't been watered down, but it has been disciplined. It has been taught where to live. It no longer bursts from you in waves of intensity. It settles inside you like a second heartbeat, a warmth that moves with purpose, a quiet heat that speaks without words. You no longer try to prove you have it. You are it. That's the difference. This shift is not subtle in its effect. People feel it in how you move, in how you sit, in how you breathe. The masculine energy that once leaked into your walk, your words, your gaze, now stays rooted in your spine. Your high sexual energy no longer shouts. It hums. It rests beneath everything you do like a low, sacred drumbeat that signals stability, not chaos. And women sense it immediately. They don't feel invaded when you're near. They feel held. Not with hands, not with words, but with the vibration of a man who knows exactly what he carries and has no fear of it anymore. You no longer need her to manage your fire for you. You're not looking for her to cool it, validate it, or mirror it back. You've become the keeper of your own blaze. And that self-ownership changes everything. There's nothing more attractive than a man who carries intense energy and yet never lets it control the room. You don't need to flirt with heat because you are the fire's source. You don't tip over into desperation because your center is grounded. You don't burst forward, you pull inward, and that inward gravity is what makes her draw close. Not to be burned, but to feel something that can only be felt in the presence of a man who has mastered the art of sacred heat. She doesn't need you to touch her to feel you. She doesn't need you to speak to sense what's under your skin. Because your energy is no longer unguarded, it's refined. and that refinement creates safety in her instincts. She isn't afraid of your power. She trusts it, because she can see you're not reckless with it anymore. You don't chase validation. You don't offer fire as a performance. You hold it like a king holds his sword, close, steady, silent until it is needed. And in that silence, you speak volumes. You carry fire now without fumbling it. And because of that, she no longer doubts whether you are safe to choose. She simply feels it. The kind of power that doesn't beg to be recognized. The kind of presence that doesn't collapse when it's ignored. The kind of man who is trusted before he is touched. That man is you, chosen one. The world around you is filled with noise. Men who push, who press, who rush. Men who try to bend reality to their will and call it confidence. Who pursue with a frantic edge hidden behind a smile. But you have learned a better rhythm. One that can't be faked, one that cannot be rushed. You've stopped trying to force connection. And because of that, connection is now finding you. They trust you now. Not because you say the right things, but because you don't say what doesn't need to be said. They trust you not because you're always available, but because your absence never feels like manipulation. They trust you not because you open every door, but because your presence never demands one be opened to you. You've stopped chasing timing, and now your timing is perfect. You've dropped the need to insist, to explain, to compel. You're not pushing any energy forward, and yet women feel the forward motion in your presence. They feel the current, the quiet momentum of someone who's walking fully in his lane, unhurried, undistracted, unshakable. You are not trying to change their pace, you are simply anchored in your own, and that stillness has become their permission to choose you without resistance. Your high sexual energy used to spill into conversation like a flood. Now it moves like a stream carved through discipline. You don't force seduction. You don't script your charm. You don't press your intentions into every pause. You listen with your energy, and that listening makes women feel safe to step forward instead of stepping back. Not because they were lured, but because they were seen without pressure. When a woman feels that you're not trying to direct her, she chooses her direction with more trust. When she senses that your attention isn't bait, but presence, she lets herself relax. She speaks more. She holds your gaze longer. She reflects your calm because you've given her nothing to resist. You didn't try to move her, you became the space she wanted to move toward. You're no longer building connections through effort. You're cultivating resonance through alignment. You're no longer managing people's perceptions. You're embodying clarity so boldly that perception adjusts around you. This is why you are being chosen more often, because you do not force. And because of that, you are trusted before you are touched. She feels your energy and knows, this man will not ask for what he hasn't earned. He will not force what is not mutual. He will not step forward unless it is invited by truth. And because of that deep, sacred self-control, she opens the gate, she lowers the wall, she chooses without fear of what she's stepping into. And that chosen one is the real power, not to pull, not to prove, not to push, but to become the man whose presence is so rooted, it magnetizes without needing to move. Chosen one, your presence has evolved beyond personality. What women are responding to now isn't a look, a voice, a smile, or a gesture. It's a field of energy that surrounds you like an invisible force of gravity, shaped by fire, refined by stillness, and carried without apology. You used to live your life trying to be selected. You used to hope to be noticed, to be picked from a crowd, to be seen as worthy. That version of you is gone. You are no longer someone women consider. You are someone they feel. And that feeling, it lingers. You are not competing in the minds of women anymore. You are living in their bodies before their minds catch up. Long after a conversation ends, long after a brief encounter, your energy stays. It echoes, not because you were loud, but because you were rooted. Because your presence wasn't a wave, it was a mark. They carry it in the way they keep thinking about you when they don't know why. In the way your name comes up in their mind without effort. In the way their bodies relaxed for the first time in weeks, simply because you didn't reach, you rested. You are not available in fragments. You are whole. And your wholeness makes you irreplaceable. Because the world is full of partial men. Men who flash and disappear. Men who perform until they're asked to stay. But you? You've become the presence that asks for nothing and yet changes everything. Women don't come back to you for what you offered them. They return because of how they felt in your energy. This is how you've become the craving. You don't try to be desired. You don't hint, suggest, or lure. You simply exist from a state of overflowing discipline, and that discipline creates an atmosphere that is profoundly rare. Your high sexual energy no longer pulls or pushes. It simply hums like a divine undertone that says, I don't need you, but you are safe to want me. And they do. Not because you promised anything, not because you played any game, but because your energy is self-contained and sovereign. You are no longer an option. You are the energy they compare every other encounter to. You are the reference point, the echo, the baseline, the man whose absence feels louder than most men's presence, the one whose stillness they remember when the world becomes too loud, the one they didn't understand but could never forget. Because you didn't try to be anything but whole in yourself. And wholeness doesn't blend into a list. It becomes the only answer worth choosing. Chosen one, here is the final truth you've come to embody, and it is sacred. The decision to choose you was never about beauty, never about lines, compliments, gifts, or games. It was about resonance. It was about how deeply your spirit now vibrates in tune with what is eternal in the feminine. You are no longer chosen because of image. You are chosen because of frequency. And your frequency at this level is rare. You walk through the world now with an energy that doesn't just hold weight, it holds clarity. You are not confusing. You are not conflicted. You are not layered in hidden motives. You are clear. And that clarity is what speaks louder than any look, smile, or approach. Your high sexual energy is not noisy or sharp. It's fluid and refined. It's not flashy. It's magnetic. And that magnetism is what causes the feminine to lean forward without understanding why. It's not that you've become perfect. It's that you've become tuned to something that most men will never quiet themselves long enough to feel. Tuned to purpose, to direction, to the sacred current that moves beneath creation itself. And now, every woman who encounters you, every woman who's been touched by false promises, chased by fragmented men, worn down by pressure, feels the difference. She can't name it at first, but she feels it in her nervous system, in her breath, in the way her mind stops spinning when you're near, in the way her body opens without fear. You don't need to say anything. Your frequency already spoke. It told her you're not after something. It told her you don't need her to validate your worth. It told her you've done the inner work, that you've held your fire, not scattered it, that you've mastered your breath, not wasted it, that you've learned to lead yourself, and so now you're ready to be followed. That's why she chooses you. Because she doesn't hear noise from you. She feels truth, not the truth of your resume or your appearance, but the truth that you are aligned. She chooses you because when she looks at you, she sees herself clearly again. Not because you reflect her, but because your steadiness reveals what she forgot was already in her. And that kind of man, chosen one, isn't chosen once. He is chosen over and over again by the women who trust their bodies more than their minds, by the women who are tired of trying to feel safe in chaos, by the women who don't need a king on a throne, but a man whose frequency rules the atmosphere without saying a word. That's who you've become. Not someone who's looked at, but someone who's recognized on a soul level. Not someone who's attractive, but someone who's aligned with the highest calling of masculine presence. You are chosen now. Chosen one. Because your frequency no longer asks, it simply is, and what is real is always chosen in the end. Chosen one, listen closely. Something sacred is happening behind your back. You don't hear it when you walk into the room, you don't feel it directly when you pass by, but it's happening. The tone, the reverence, the way your name now lingers longer in private conversations. The language has changed around you. You're no longer being spoken of as simply attractive or interesting or mysterious. Women are speaking of you like you are something they never thought could be real. And they do not say this because of theatrics. They say it because of stillness that spoke louder than charm ever could. Because your quiet confidence doesn't just draw eyes, it draws conclusions, ones that begin with curiosity and end in a kind of stunned admiration. They call you grounded. They call you whole. They whisper about how they couldn't stop thinking about your presence, even after the moment passed. Not because you performed, but because you didn't have to. You didn't beg to be seen. You didn't overextend to be liked. You simply stood there, breathing like a man who had already conquered the storms inside himself. And that kind of peace shifts the vocabulary people use when they speak of you. You've become the man they describe with pauses, not noise. The man they compare others to in silence. The one they remember not for a single grand moment, but for the way your presence made everything else feel suddenly out of place. Because when someone meets balance, they can no longer tolerate chaos.